1492. Spain does two things. One, they send Columbus off to bump into the Bahamas and the golden age of Spain begins. And two, they kicked out every Jew in the kingdom. Why? Well, because after hundreds of years in Spain, the Jews had managed to make themselves both successful and hated at the same time. They were the taxmen, the money guys, administrators, basically the people everyone hated. On top of that, during the Reconquista, Christians looked at the Jews and thought, wait a minute, these guys worked with the Muslims, collected our taxes, and now they are climbing up the social ladder as converts. Yeah, not exactly a recipe for interfaith harmony. So Ferdinand and Isabella made the call, convert or get out. And just like that, one of Europe's largest Jewish communities vanished. This video is for educational purposes. It covers historical events and includes satirical humor. Nothing here promotes hatred or violence against any group. And the jokes are just that, jokes. Our story kicks off in Judea, home of the Jews and apparently an unlimited supply of religious zealots. Rome showed up like, listen, we don't care what sky god you pray to, pay us taxes, don't riot, everyone's happy. The Jews, God is our only king. Rome, cool, here's an army. Revolt after revolt after revolt. Rome crushed them like cockroaches, got sick of the whole thing and decided, enough, you're grounded forever. Jewish communities were scattered across the empire. One of the landing spots, Hispania, modern-day Spain. Now, Rome itself didn't care much about religion. They were the live and let live type, as long as you follow two golden rules: pay taxes and don't cause uprising. Worship Jupiter, Yahweh, or your neighbor's pet goat, whatever. Just keep the money flowing and the streets quiet. So the Jews in Spain set up shop. Merchants, craftsmen, traders, landowners, etc. But here's the thing. The average Iberian didn't see them as fellow countrymen. Not because religion. The Iberians weren't hardcore theological nerds. But because humans have a universal hobby. Disliking outsiders who move next door. The Jews spoke differently, dressed differently, married among themselves, followed their own laws. Basically, they acted like any immigrant community does. And the Iberians reacted like any locals do. Who the hell are these people? And remember, Rome had already stamped chronic troublemakers on the Jewish brand back in Judea. The reputation didn't just vanish because they changed their zip codes, so in Spain they weren't persecuted, but they were never fully trusted either. When Rome finally face-planted into the grave, the Visigoths vault into Iberia like, so who is in charge here? Oh, nobody? Cool, we'll take it. For the Jews, honestly, not much changed. The Visigoths were Arians. I am Adolf Hitler! Not this type, but the Christian DLC pack that the Pope really hated type. And because they were outside the Catholic bubble, they weren't obsessed with hunting down every religious difference. As long as you paid taxes and didn't start riots, you were fine. And the Jews weren't just fine, they were thriving. Trade networks stretched across the Mediterranean. They ran markets, owned land, worked as craftsmen, and yes, they were knee-deep in the slave trade. They supplied labor to estates and cities, while making sure they themselves never end up in chains. Why? Because Jewish communities in Iberia functioned like a tight-knit cartel. Wealthy families didn't just sit on their gold like dragons. They used it to protect their own. Poor Jewish farmer drowning in debt bailed out. One of their own about to be sold into slavery, ransom. It wasn't charity, it was a survival strategy. The result? While Iberia was drowning in servitude, Christian peasants, one bad harvest away from being sold off, the Jews were almost untouchable. And that's not a good look when you are a peasant. Imagine, you spend your whole life breaking your back in the field, praying not to starve. Meanwhile, there is a minority community whose members are safer, richer, and sometimes, and by sometimes I mean a lot of times, literally own your Christian neighbors. Resentment doesn't take a PhD to develop. Then came the plot twist. The 6th century, the Visigothic kings converted from Arianism to Catholic Christianity. Overnight, the church went from annoying neighbor to landlord with a shotgun, and the church had opinions about the Jews, namely, why are these stubborn people still rejecting Christ and holding power over Christians? So the hammer came down. Jews can hold public office. Jews can own Christian slaves. Jews can openly practice their religion. Paganism wiped out completely. The Jews still here, legally stripped down to second-class status. Except, here's the kicker, they still had influence. On paper, they were boxed in. In reality, Jewish communities kept pooling resources, protecting each other, and leveraging international networks. Unlike pagans, they were the Old Testament's chosen people. And in a Christian world obsessed with biblical legitimacy, that carried weight. So even as the crown said no power for the Jews still controlled the jobs that generated money, tax collection, lending, trade, and that created a toxic paradox: publicly restricted, quietly powerful. Did all Jews live like kings? No, plenty were poor, plenty suffered, and even wealthy families took a hit under Catholic rule. But the collective resilience remained, enough to keep them afloat and enough to keep everyone else simmering with resentment. This was the Visigothic era, the moment Jews went from just another minority to those untouchable outsiders we can stand by, still rely on. And the tension, it's not going away, it's only gonna explode later. Early 8th century, the Muslims invaded Iberia and tear through it like hot knife through gold butter. The Christian kingdoms collapse, and here's the fun twist: a lot of Jews welcomed them in. And why is that? Because under the Visigoths, Jews, while still socially and economically powerful, were constantly strangled by religious bans, administrative restrictions, and those lovely laws about not owning Christian slaves. Add to the fact that the local population hated their gods, and lower class Jews were stuck living under this pressure, ever-present hostility. So when the Muslims showed up, converted, nah, just pay us money and don't annoy us, the Jews practically throw a parade. And the Muslims, they loved it. Conquering a hostile population is hard. Having a ready-made minority willing to collaborate, priceless. The Jews knew the land, the trade routes, the cities, they had networks, money, and weren't part of the conquered majority. That was the genius of it. They could help run the new order without feeling like they were betraying their own people, because they weren't the ones getting crushed. And so as the Muslim armies advanced, the Jewish communities often acted as guides, suppliers, and administrators. To the defeated Christians, this looked like high treason. To the Muslims, it looked like very efficient project management. And it worked. Under Islam, Jews weren't equal, but they were dhimmi, protected people, which is a fancy way of saying we recognize you from the holy book, you are not total infidels, but you are still not us, so cough up extra taxes. Once settled under Muslim rule, Jewish community thrived. Translators, merchants, financiers, physicians, diplomats, and yes, slaves. If a Muslim ruler needs somebody smart, educated, and unlikely to stab him in the back at the next tribal feud, he probably called a Jew. Some even managed chunks of the caliphate's administration, while the emirs focused on doing what emirs do best: war. And now for the awkward part. Jews played a major role in the slave trade. They moved Christian captives from battlefield to Muslim buyers further south. To them it was just business. To the average Christian peasant whose cousin just got sold to North Africa, oh, they were thrilled. Culturally, this era gets labeled as the golden age of Jewish life in al-Andalus. Philosophy, poetry, science, medicine. Jewish intellectual life bloomed like never before. But let's not kid ourselves. Golden age didn't mean paradise. They were still second-class citizens. They still had to pay the jizya tax. They still couldn't build synagogues taller than mosques. But here's the kick. For all those legal limitations, Jews in Muslim Spain had freedoms, protection, and influence that the Christian majority didn't even dream of, and that's going to be a huge problem later. Fast forward a few centuries, the Muslim Caliphate in Spain started falling apart. Civil wars, rival dynasties, endless backstabbing, and the Christians, they've been hiding up in the northern mountains the whole time, freezing their asses off, eating turnips, and praying for the day they can come back down and stab someone in the name of Jesus. Well, guess what? That day finally arrives. Enter the Reconquista, the slow, bloody, centuries-long process of Christians retaking Iberia. At first, surprisingly, it's not that bad for the Jews. As the Christian kingdoms pushed south, they needed administrators, doctors, translators, and who's been doing that under the Muslims for centuries? Yep, the Jews. So Jews become useful allies. Kings grant them privileges, let them manage royal finances, collect taxes, and basically run the medieval version of IRS. In Castile and Aragon, some Jews even rise up to top jobs like court treasurer. To the peasants though, this was infuriating. Imagine being a starving farmer, you just got your land back from the Muslims, and now the guy collecting your taxes is the same Jew whose granddad was running things for the Muslims. The optics, they were terrible. Meanwhile, religious tensions are heating up. The Crusades kicked off. Everyone's hype about killing infidels abroad. And the church decides, hey, why stop at the Muslims in Jerusalem when we have non-Christians right here? Suddenly, tolerating Jews felt like letting Satan rent a room in Europe. By the 13th century, century, the vibe flips completely. New laws starting rolling in. Jews must wear special badges, Jews are barred from high offices, Jews are kicked out of certain trades. And the church keeps hammering the message, Jews are Christ killers, usurers, and probably still mustn't collaborate. And to be fair, those things weren't totally made up. Centuries of working for the Muslim rulers, as an example, has left a mark. Memory is long, forgiveness is short. Then the real nightmare for the Jews hits. Pogroms. In 1391, anti-Jewish riots explode across Spain. Synagogues burned, thousands of slaughters, entire communities wiped off the map. Survivors get to choose, convert or die. Many choose conversion. These new Christians or conversos officially became Catholic, but everyone still suspects they are secretly lighting Sabbath candles in their basements, and here's the kicker. Some of them are, which only makes the paranoia worse. This sets the stage for the grand finale, the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
Why just kill your enemies when you can legally torture them first? By 1492, the Reconquista is complete. Granada falls, the last Muslim strongholds bites the dust, and Ferdinand and Isabella are now branded the most Catholic monarchs in Europe. They celebrate with a parting gift, the Edict of Expulsion. Every Jew who won't convert gets kicked out. Centuries of Jewish life in Spain gone overnight. And if you're wondering why I didn't talk about the whole blood libel thing, yeah, there were cases, but they were actually too rare, like the La Guardia trial that Torquemada waived Queen Isabella, because even if it happened exactly as he claimed, it was an isolated event, meaning these kind of things happen, but not that often for the general population to notice. So it wasn't the prime cause for centuries of hatred, it just made really good propaganda when the crown needed one less excuse. And here's the twist, even some who converted to survive ended up in the Inquisition's dungeons, accused of Judaizing. And to be fair, not that you even have to be a Jew to end up there, it was the Inquisition, breathing the wrong way could get you tortured. Now to zoom out. After the Reconquista, Spain wanted unity, one faith, one crown, one identity. And while the prime enemy had always been the Muslims, once they were gone, the church and the monarchy still had the Jewish promo, and they saw them as the fifth column, loyal only to themselves, too quick to switch sides. Now, were some Jews shady under the Muslim rule, owning slaves, running the money game, especially usury, cutting deals with whoever held power? Absolutely. Mostly the wealthy elite, the type who always land on their feet no matter who is in charge. But the broke farmer who has been taxed to oblivion, he doesn't do nuances. All he sees, I'm starving, my lord is broke, and the guy with the funny hat is here to take my last chicken. So, to fix this Jewish problem in Spain, the church and the monarchy used this. They swooped in like good news peasants, it's all their fault, and God says you get to fix it. The end result, 80 to 150,000 Jews leave Spain. Others convert under pressure, innocent and guilty alike are crushed under the same tidal wave. And Spain gets its unity. One faith, one crown, one identity.